Hi guys, so back again with another video. Today's video is about the next level up from the beast mode video that we did for the Mini Z last time. So last time, well, a few videos before, we did a video about the Mini Z and how I could use LiPo batteries, and I could use a fancy transmitter that you can get for the Mini Z, the Synchro Touch, to make the MA-020 a better car. Now, what we didn't do in that video was upgrade the electronics and the motor. And the reason we didn't do that was because with the Mini Zs, it's very hard to do this without going and getting another car. So normally in sort of most mini RC or any RC, you can change the electronics and you can change the motor because they are kind of separate. You can choose, mix and match what you want. With the Mini Z, the most you can do with a standard Mini Z is maybe upgrade to an X-Speed motor or something like that, which will then still work with your circuitry that you've got at present. If you wanted to go to a brushless motor, which is a completely different style motor and how it operates, but gives you more smooth power and more power, you can't just change the motor, you have to change the circuit board. And the details of this I won't go into in this video, but suffice to say, with the Mini Z, if you wanted to upgrade, say, a standard MA-020 to a brushless version, you would have to replace the radio gear, the board, which is the receiver and the speed controller, probably even the gyro. It's a different type of gyro you need for that board. Also the servo that's connected to it, and also then the motor. And usually that would cost you a lot of money. Probably the radio and the servo are all come together, probably about £80, and then probably another £40 or £50, nearly £140 to change your car to being brushless. So that's why they do the VE Pro. So the MA-020 VE Pro is a brushless version of this car, and it comes usually without a shell, without wheels, but just it's got the better radio gear, the better brushless motor, and it can handle more power. Okay, so in the case of this car, they stopped making VE Pros a few years ago. So when I was looking to go brushless initially, I was trying to buy a VE Pro. I couldn't find one. We've got a few now, but at that point in time, I was determined to make the MA-020 brushless. So this is what I did. I actually pretty much had to destroy one of my MA-020s to do that. So the first thing I tried to do was actually connect an existing servo steering mechanism to a regular receiver. So after much research, I fitted a mini servo board off Banggood to convert the 5 wires into a 3 wire so I could plug it into a regular receiver. And I managed to do it, and I managed to get it to work, but the steering for some reason just wouldn't work as well. I couldn't get the end points to go all the way, and I tried a couple of different radios. I still couldn't get it to work, and I decided then the only way to do this properly, to make a car that would be worth handling, would be to replace the servo system as well. So this was after experimentation that I finally gave up, and what I did then was, this is a chassis. Actually, fate lent a hand, because while I was trying to do these things to the car, I noticed that there was a big crack along my chassis, and it's where the batteries constantly being taken in and out. The car had taken a few knots, and there's a few weak points, and the chassis had split. So I used the opportunity then to get a new chassis and experiment with the existing one. And as you can see here, I removed all the steering mechanism, removed the plastic that houses the steering mechanism, which left a nice size square here. And that square was pretty much the exact size of a WL car's servo. So let's just show you on here. Now, I'm not suggesting you do this, because once you go down this road, there's no going back. You've destroyed your Mini Z as it would be. The steering mechanism will never fit in again. So you can see this servo fits. So with that, I set about modifying the steering system. And now, ignore all the suspension here for now. This is an upgrade from Atomic. I'll go into detail about it in a moment. I'm just going to concentrate on the actual steering system. So you can see on this car here, we've got a servo in place, an arm going out from the servo to a rod here, and you can see a little screw in there. So when I first did this, I 3D printed a whole new system of steering, which worked, but just didn't seem very practical. I wanted to use as many Kyosho parts as I could, so, or stock parts. So the only part I ended up printing was this little block here, you can see, that connects the servo steering arm rod to this part here with a little screw. So that's the only extra part I had to use to make this work. The rest of this is a SAS suspension and steering upgrade from Atomic, which I got from Miracle Mart, which converts the front into having proper shocks, which actually does make a huge difference because I can adjust them by turning these dials just like I can with the rear double wishbone suspension. It looks kind of cool as well. I can adjust the ride height with these screws here, although these are slightly oversized, I've used for emphasis, but you can make them smaller so you can get lower profile bodies on. And that then gave me a proper steering mechanism. As you can hear, that works pretty well. And you'll see in the footage of the car drifting that, yes, the steering is pretty good. So with that done, then the rest was just about using a receiver and a brushless speed controller for a brushless motor. Well, the brushless motor fitted just fine. I didn't have to do any modding there. I just used the standard Mini Z mounts, all-wheel drive mounts with the correct pinion. Put a metal pinion on there, and that all fitted beautifully. That's slid in without any issue. The next thing was finding a speed controller that would fit, and what I've done is, as you can see here, I've cut a hole in the chassis vertically this way, and in there I fitted a Hobbywing 10 amp speed controller. I think this cost about £10 or £12. It was pretty cheap. I got the program card for it as well. And you can see all the wiring is relatively neat. It hides away pretty well. And that's the plug for the battery. The only thing I think I didn't need to do was have these big connectors in here. I think if I could do it again, which I probably will at some point, I would actually solder the wires directly onto the motor. It would just save so much space. But it works. I've not had to change it. They don't really get in the way. So there's the brushless speed controller. We've got the brushless motor. So that's a 6000 kV Surpass Hobby brushless motor. And then finally I used a Radiolink receiver, which has got a gyro built in for convenience, which now gives me a great deal of control over the car. I now have options to control the EXP, the steering EXP, throttle EXP, braking, anti-lock braking, and I can control the gyro from the transmitter from the side, which you've probably seen on other models there. So I can actually control the gyro from there. So this really now, the chassis is all Mini Z. These are all Mini Z. Okay, these are aftermarket Atomic. And the car itself, the electronics are all third party, so they're not Kyosho. They're actually, you know, it's Radiolink, Hobby King, WL Toys. So it's a bit of a hybrid of a car. It's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster, different parts from everywhere. And using a brushless speed controller now, we needed the LiPo batteries to make the brushless motor really work. And here we've got the LiPo batteries that we use. Trying to find one we can actually see what the badge says on it. There we go. These nanotech batteries. Let's focus in on that. 7.4 volts. So now I'm using the same battery systems I use for my other cars, and it just sits nicely there like that. And the weight balance is absolutely perfect. This car is actually very well balanced. And you might be thinking, how do I hold that on? I've got a high-tech rubber band which works really well, and actually out of all the all the mini cars I've got, it's actually the neatest battery holding system. It holds it nicely in place, it doesn't go anywhere, and balance wise it works pretty well. Weight wise, this car is probably one of the lightest I've got. If we go back to my video of weighing all the cars, you'll see that this one is actually one of the lightest. So with that, we now had a Mini Z. I even mounted a light system, so you can see this little lead here goes to my light system. I might do a little demo for you now just so you can see it in operation. Let's put a battery in. Now the only downside to this speed controller is the fact that there's no on-off switch, which is a bit annoying. Okay, so that's the speed controller on. We'll put the battery there for now. Okay, you can see the lights have come on in the car. So let's just show you the steering in action. So at the moment the gyro is turned off. If I turn the gyro on, you can see it correcting. Turn it off again. And that is really handy to have. So I've got other options on here is a front one-way diff, as you can see there. Let's just turn the car off again. Actually, let's just give the throttle a buzz so you can hear it. And you can see that front one-way diff there spinning. Okay, brilliant. So let's just turn the car back off. So handling wise, it's a beast. It's actually a beast. So I've raced this against the Mini Z VE Pro, and it actually really performs. Definitely has some different characteristics to the VE Pro, and it is a very nice car to drive. It's very well balanced, and I think that's down to the Kyosho chassis. The chassis itself is balanced. I think the upgrades I've made, obviously I forgot to mention the rear double wishbone suspension. This is again from Miracle Mart. The reason I used the rear one for Miracle Mart was it's a fraction of the cost. I think this cost me about £10–12, and the Kyosho one costs about £50 or something ridiculous. So again, it gives me the option to adjust the ride height. There's a screw here under my finger, you can see, that adjusts the rear ride height, so you can do that on both wheels. So what I've got here effectively is like an AMZ. I can adjust all the ride heights. I've got four-wheel independent shocks, so I can actually adjust the dampening. So I can make the car lower or higher. I can make it stiffer, weaker, just by turning these rather than to replace the springs. I no longer have the silly front clips, which are really annoying on the Mini Z, which I've lost on this car, because this now uses special screws that bolt in from the front, as you can see. So the car itself is pretty sweet, and you'll see from the drifting footage it handles. So I thought I'll just show you, this is what you would have to do if you wanted to make a regular Mini Z brushless and use a different radio. You can't just replace one thing, you have to replace everything, effectively strip the car out. I'm definitely not saying you should do this. I mean, I did it and I knew full well I might have ruined my Mini Z altogether. Now I've kept the radio gear from here as a spare for another car, but I'm never going to convert it back. I love this car and it's unique, it's one of a kind, and it definitely performs differently. And I've run it at longer wheelbases, it still is pretty amazing. And the steering, I mean, this car I've done, you know, probably about 6 or 7 race meets with it where we race all day, and it's done hundreds and hundreds of laps. I've had no issue. And if I did, the most I ever have to do is replace a servo horn or a screw there, thread lock it if it gets loose. The actual steering mechanism itself, the other advantage as well is the turning angle. You get much more, so much that I actually had to adjust the chassis there because it was so close. So this system here, the steering system, you wouldn't necessarily have to employ all this to add this servo. You could probably get away with just using the regular steering arm, still doing the bit here with removing the steering mechanism, but keep the regular steering diff cover and the original suspension, and just put a rod into the steering arm like I've done there. And the only other adjustment I've done is I've trimmed away a bit more of the plastic on the lower plate. This is part of the new steering system, but just so that the wheels have that much more ability to turn. And I haven't over tightened this bit, so it gives a little bit of give, but the car is really stable. In straight line, it's very stable. So yeah, thought that'd be interesting for you guys to see. One last thing to mention, I'm thinking about doing a giveaway for the when we get to 1,000 subscribers. Now, more than likely that giveaway will be one of my cars. So I'd like to know if anyone's got a preference which car I should do as a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. So how quickly we get there depends on how many subscribers we have, obviously, but the quicker we get there, the quicker someone will get one of my cars. So if you're a subscriber already, please leave a comment below and let me know which car you would like to see me give away. Any of the cars that I've shown in my videos, feel free just to comment, and the car that gets the most comments is probably the one I will use. Obviously individual comments from different subscribers, not one subscriber putting down 1,000 comments saying they want the BZ3. And obviously if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to make yourself eligible and leave a comment. That's all for now, guys, and see you next time.